So picking up where we left off, and this is part two, we are moving into empathy maps. So empathy maps are a great tool for processing information that the designer has collected. Classic empathy maps draw, it should be from. Can I change that? Oh, I can. Good.
I can't see the
Oh, I'm not screen sharing?
no.
Okay, I apologize. Let me start over. Can you see my screen now? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right. Um, so saying it again. So moving on to this phase, empathy maps. Empathy maps are a great tool for processing information the designer has collected. Classic empathy maps draw from interview data to answer 5 questions typically. So those 5 questions are, who exactly are the users and what are their situations? What do users say about their experience with the product or similar products? What do users think about their experiences? What do users do before, during, and after their experiences? And what do users feel about their experiences? So once you guys conduct the interviews, so you're going to conduct a questionnaire, a survey. You're going to conduct a phone interview. You're going to conduct a in-person interview, and you're going to conduct a video interview. So you're going to interview at least 4 people, and that's going to be how you collect your research. So that interview data, once you collect that interview data, what you're going to do is you're going to create an empathy map. And the empathy map, these are exactly the questions that you're going to answer. So this is also part of the homework situation, or the homework assignment. So just going through this, just so that we make sure that when you go off and you complete the homework assignment, who are the users and what are their situations, right? So before we even conduct the interviews, let's just make up an imaginary scenario where let's just pretend as if you got hired to work at FedEx, because we've been looking at the FedEx website, right? And because we're all FedEx users, we can kind of answer these questions from our perspective, even though this isn't what you're, this is not how you would do it. You would actually go out and you would interview, because you can't assume that your experience with FedEx is everyone else's experience with FedEx. But just for the sake of making sure the answers are streamlined when you conduct your interviews, let's just go through this process. So let's go back a few steps. And we're going to create a scenario. So our scenario is we have 2 weeks for the overall project to be created, for the overall design to be implemented. We have 2 weeks. And our budget is $2,500. That's our budget. And the parameters are that we have to maintain company branding throughout the site. And another guideline or parameter is that we have to design for users who are 55 years of age and older. Right. So these are our business requirements. So these are the business requirements. The business requirements are, we have 2 weeks to roll out the new design. We have a $2,500 budget. We have to maintain company branding, meaning the colors, the typography throughout the site or throughout the application. And we have to design for users who are 55 years of age and older. Another parameter is that we have to design for users who have outdated or yeah, outdated slow devices. So those are our business requirements. Now, when we go back to like our questionnaire, our questions, you're working for FedEx and they want to improve their shipping experience. What are some questions that you would ask users who utilize FedEx website to ship packages? What are some questions that we should be asking these people?
I would ask, well, one question. You said shipping, right?
Yes,
Not
we
tracking or
shipping. Yeah, well, everything that is involved with shipping.
oh, um, well, weight. Like, what's the weight, size, or
No, so this is I see where you're going. We're not, this is not the design phase for these questions are not what we need to implement. So the question that you're asking is your questions are centered around um, questions we need to ask ourselves to fulfill their wants, their needs, right? But this phase of interviewing is all about us gauging what the user wants, what will create a pleasant experience for them. So these interviews are for us to gather data so that we can have insight from the end user to know what makes shipping, going online to ship, a pleasant, easy, intuitive experience for them. So what types of questions should we be asking them from that vantage point, from that perspective, from that point of view?
oh, so for the older people, maybe will they be able to see the font or the text
Those are
or spell it right?
those are considerations for us, not them. We do want to consider that for them, but that's not something we're going to ask them. If I'm sitting down and I'm interviewing you to know what you like, what you would like to see. So think of it from this point. Think of it as um you're creating a new product and you want to make sure that there's a need for the product before you roll it out. You understand what I'm saying? Or you want to kind of gauge how people are experiencing. Think about any survey you've ever when you go to a restaurant and you fill out a survey, what kind of questions are they asking you?
Oh,
Or
how was your experience?
is right. So these interview questions are experience questions.
Oh, okay. What would you like to see, or what would you
Right. Now you're on the
change?
right.
What would you add?
Right, exactly. So let me see. Let me pull this up. Okay. So going back to, uh-oh, why is this? I hate when this happens. Why is everything highlight? Did someone highlight everything on the shared document? Or was that me?
It's probably me.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I want to start a new document. And I'm going to share this document so we can all see it. So we're going to work through this together. And I this is the reason that I want to work through it because like if we hadn't worked through it, then you would have come back with questions that were from the wrong point of view, or not from the wrong point of view, but from a point of view that comes later in the process. So let me see. Okay, can you guys see my screen again?
No. Oh, wait, yes.
You can't? Okay. Okay, so let's construct these interview questions. So here's the scenario is that we've been hired at FedEx to design a better shipping experience for their online customers, right? And our business requirements were we were designing for our business requirements are we have 2 weeks. We have a 2 week deadline. We have a budget of $2,500, which is you would never know if you work for FedEx, but I'm just putting it there. What else did I say? I said they were 55 and older. What was the other requirement? 2 week deadline, a budget of $2,500. Oh, and we have to design everything within um, company brand standards. Okay, so in our design thinking, we are at the interviewing phase, the empathy phase, right? So as we are interviewing these users, what are some questions that should be on our interview questionnaire, our questionnaire survey? What are some questions?
On a scale of 1 to 10, how was your experience
Okay. How was your experience? What?
navigating the site?
So, so how can you narrow that down to what our focus is?
On a scale to 1 to 10, how was your shipping experience?
Great. How how would you rate your experience in shipping packages utilizing FedEx Online? All right, what's another question, Janella? Is Janella still here?
Yeah, so it takes me a second to unmute.
Okay. So what's another question we should ask?
That's what I'm trying to think of. I guess we could ask, what's the site? Or we're only asking questions detailed to the website, right?
We're only asking questions. Like so we are designing a better experience for people who go online to ship packages through FedEx. So we need to
Right.
interview their customers, we need to interview end users so that we can gauge what will make a better experience for them. So what type of questions will we ask to gauge how to create a better experience for them?
Right. Okay. So I would ask if this site was easy to maneuver.
Okay. The site, or how would you narrow it? What's our focus
On the user experience
for what ex
and
for what
shipping
experience
packages.
for shipping? So what's the question? How can you narrow that question down so
Were
that it's
you able to were you able to ship your package successfully?
yes, that's a good question. Ship your package successfully utilizing what?
utilizing our online
Right.
website, our
Yes.
website.
Yes. What other questions should we be asking? What other questions?
Um, I feel like the shipping is just so cut and dry. Coming from their experience that they just put it in.
So you need to, so when you're as a UX designer, you have to think about every step of the process because the process, so you're thinking about everything that they have to do. So and you want to know how that experience is for them every step of the way. So what are key milestones that they have to cover? So looking at this website, looking at this process, right? So FedEx online shopping. So you work for FedEx. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go and you're going to actually see what their online shipping process is. So what's the first thing that happens when you click on shipping on this website?
They're asking, log in or go as a guest.
Okay. All right. So what question, so if a user has to do that, if a user has to do that, what's a question you can ask that's centered around that process?
Oh, are you a member or a guest? Because their experience might be different.
No, this is all about their experience. The whole purpose of these questions is to make sure I'm trying to gauge whether or not the site is easy for you to use. I'm trying to gauge whether or not the site is usable. I'm trying to gauge whether or not you have pain points. So that's the objective of the interview. The objective of the interview is to assess what's going to make this application or this product more usable. What's going to make this product an easy experience? What's going to make this product not have pain points? What pain points are present? That's the focus of your empathy. Remember, if the question isn't centered around empathy, you're not asking the right question. So
Hmm.
every question is an empathy question. So what's an empathy question?
Were you able to create an account?
Yes. What's another empathy question? So let's go back and let's go from the vantage point of what else is happening here on this page? So reading through this page, this is the first step, right? So what is this first step? What's the details of this first step? What are they asking you to do? And what else are they asking you to do? So
It was
so when you guys
it's, it says choose which shipping tool you want to access.
right. So from an empathy point of view, what's the question? The question is, were you able to easily choose the shipping tool you want to access? Right. So the objective
Um,
of the page is for the end user to be able to choose a tool that they want to use to access. So if that's the objective of the page and that's a step, it's been established that this is an important step. So if it's been established as this is an important step to the shipping process, you need to make sure as the UX designer, was it easy? Were you able to easily select the tool or method to ship your package? That's the empathy question. Was it easy? It's all about experience. And was it easy for you? Was the process easy for you? Was it useful for you? Right? So you're going through the steps and you need to make sure there's no hiccups with each step. So if your objective is to make sure there's no hiccup with each step, you need to ask questions about each step because that's empathy. Right? So
So
what would
be
that
very,
go ahead?
I'm sorry. I was saying, so be like very elementary about it. Like, don't miss a step. Like, consider every step of the process. Like, even though
Right.
we might think that's common sense, but actually ask that.
Because if you think it's common sense, what is that called?
Right. Okay.
That's called an
I mean, I don't know.
assumption. That's an assumption. And one of the number one 101 rules with UX design, there are no assumptions
Hmm.
because that's your assumption, but you're not.
Right.
What happens when we talk about last week and we talk about people, it's their first time, right?
Hmm.
What about the first time users that have never been online before? What
And
about people?
disabilities.
Yeah, what about people with different disabilities? So
Gotcha.
assumptions are arrogance. You have to drop all
Oh,
assumptions. They're arrogant. Assumptions are arrogance because assumptions is, well, I don't know, this is common sense. I don't understand why. That's your experience.
right.
You know what I mean? That's the experience of the people that we're surrounded by based on our access. It's second nature for us, but that's arrogant. So no assumptions. So going through it, what about someone who's like 75 or 80? That's is not common sense for them. So that goes all the way back to empathy, right? And empathy is who are you considering? People with disabilities, people with assistive technology, people who have never been online before, people who are not tech savvy, people who are older. No assumptions. Okay. So reframing our thought process again, so we're back on shipping, FedEx online shipping tool options. Please choose which FedEx online shipping tool you want to access. So what should our question be? I already
How
Are
said the
you
easy
answer.
was
able?
it to click the tool?
No, I don't know what you're talking about.
How
Like if you
easy how easy was it for you to decide which shipping tool you wanted to access?
exactly. Yep. Right. And then you got to remember too, like the people who you are interviewing, they yeah. How easy did you find it to access the shipping tool or method you desire to use? That's a valid question because I came on here and I went here, but they come and they end up, this is where they land, right? So yeah, it looks obvious. You click on rate. And if it's obvious, that's good. That's good design. You know what I mean? Like if it's like if you're looking at this website and you're like, that's so obvious, that means that the UX team did an awesome job with that. That doesn't need to be changed. Everything that you're assessing doesn't need to be changed either. So if you're going through it and you're thinking to yourself, like, that's so straightforward, that means the UX team did a phenomenal job on that, but there's still no assumptions. All right, so what's another question that we need to ask?
Were you able to rate for shipping?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Were you able to check the rates for shipping?
Yeah, yep. And let's just step through that and make sure we're not. Another thing when you're hired onto a company, like always look at the product that they are asking you to design for, if it exists. If you get hired at a bigger company, the product already exists, right? So one of the first things you want to ask is, what's the URL or what's the link to the product? What's the link to the service? Because you want to go through and you want to comb through it as a UX designer. So you're not just like blindly applying what you learned during training, right? You want to see what their process is. So going back, what was your question again, Janella?
Were you able to check shipping rate or the rate of shipping?
And what's another question that should be asked as a follow-up question for this?
As far as
And
usability,
I'm sorry, say it.
you're saying as far as usability is concerned, because overall, I would want to know if they felt it was affordable, but
Whether they
if
felt it
it's
was what?
affordable, but if we're just speaking on usability,
Because you asked me, was I able? Yes, I was able to, or no, I wasn't. But what's another follow-up question? You want to know more than just whether or not I was able to do it. What else do you want to know? Because this is all about empathy and experience.
was it easy?
Yeah, yep. So you would say on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being extremely easy and intuitive, right? You also, when you're forming questions, you got to let them know, like, 1 is your worst experience, 10 is your best experience, or whatever whatever the key is for that. You want to make sure that you make that obvious or spell that out for the person that you're interviewing. So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being extremely easy and intuitive, um, how easy were you able to calculate the rate of shipping, right? So let me see, let's go back. Going through the steps though, shipping manager. So we're going to choose FedEx ship manager, log in with an account, FedEx log as ship as a guest. All right. So shipping as a guest, what's some questions that we want to ask? They have here where you enter your what do you want to ask in terms of experience looking at this layout?
How easy was it to enter your shipping information?
Yeah, exactly. On a scale of 1 to 10, how easy was it for you to enter your shipping information? What's the follow-up question to this experience?
Explain or list examples.
No, but you're on the right track at least. Just this is like a generic question about this experience. Because as a UX designer, what are you trying to identify? What's always the objective?
User experience and pain points.
Right. So if we're always focused on pain points and eliminating pain points, and we're always focused on making sure that the application is useful, when we talk about pain points, what's another question we can ask? I think you guys are overthinking. Or
I
the
think so
question is
too.
so obvious, like you don't think that it's the obvious answer. But I assure you it's the obvious answer. So what's the question? We're focused on pain points. What's the question?
How easy was it for you to navigate through the
Right. So that's we did that already. So I may say, so let's just say I answered a question and I say it was about a 5. It was a 3.
What would you change?
Yeah. Like, well, what's a better, more succinct way of saying that? You guys,
How would you make this a better experience? A better
mm-hmm. But there you have to, so what questions would you ask to guide them in answering that? But before we even get to that, we're going to come back to that question. We're still here. On a scale of 1 to 10, how easy was it for you to enter your shipping information? Somebody enters, let's just say they say it was a 3. As a UX designer, your goal is to make sure that the application is useful, intuitive, and that you identify pain points and remove pain points. If I'm trying to identify pain points, what is the question?
Why did you choose that number? Why did you rate?
No, we're going to go back. We don't know what they chose. Angela, come on.
I don't know why this is so hard for me.
I don't get
I,
it. I
I,
don't
I
know
think
what
we're
you
overthinking.
guys are
I
definitely
def
overthinking. So on
I
a
definitely feel
scale,
like I'm thinking too much.
so here's the thing. On a scale of 1 to 10, how easy was it for you to enter your shipping information, right? The follow-up question to that is, did you have any difficulty entering you know what I mean? Like, did you have any difficulty entering your shipping information? Were there any questions that propose difficulty? That's the follow-up.
See, I thought that when I asked to explain your answer, but I guess it could have been a 10 and then they wouldn't have anything to explain. So, did you
But
have
I
any?
would want to know why it's a 10. I was thinking the same thing. Okay, because if
Those are
you
follow-up
rated it,
and
why did you rate it that? Why?
yeah. I follow what you're saying, but you have to you don't want to leave any you don't want to have open-ended questions that can go in any direction. So you're trying to focus in on were there like
Difficulty.
specifically the task is if the task is to fill out a form, the question needs to be very specific. Did you run into any issues answering any questions on the form? The objective of this view is to fill out the form. The objective of this view is to enter your first name, your last name, your drop down, blah, 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 blah. You need to ask, did you have any difficulties? You see what I'm saying? Like, did you run into any difficulties completing any field on the form?
So if
That's
they
a,
say yes, then we'll,
right. And then your next question is, if yes, which fields? So, did you experience, this is like the most, you can't fumble on this part. This is your job. Like, like this is the most important part of your job. The design comes after this. You can't even get to the design until you do this first, because everything that you design is based on the answers to these questions. There's no way you can show up to an interview and not know how to formulate these questions. You're not going to get hired. The whole point of everything you do is to know how to formulate these questions because this is what you build on. Like, there's nothing to do if you don't, there's nothing to design if you don't know what you're designing for. This is the first step. This is like, there's nowhere to go if you don't cover this, because what the heck are you designing if you haven't identified this? And there's no way you're an empathetic designer if you don't know what questions to ask. So the most important thing is there are no assumptions. There is no arrogance. There is no, this is common sense. There's no such thing as common sense. Because what's common to you is not common to someone who's never been online before. And I think sometimes like it's hard to break that assumption, or sometimes it's hard to break that wall because we've been living with technology for so long And you know what I mean? It's just like in our brains, it's like there's no way possible I should have to ask this question. Yes, it's way possible you should have to ask this question. So, did you experience any issues completing any of the fields on the form? Right? And to your point, the follow-up was, if yes, which fields specifically did you encounter issues with? So when we go back here, here's the thing. Remember last week when we talked about assistive technologies, right? So say, for example, someone who was visually impaired, they're going through and they're filling out this form. They're blindfolded, right? They can't see. So they may come back to you and say, I had an issue with selecting a state. Well, with somebody, if you were performing an interview, and that goes also back to, remember when we talked about last week, we talked about making sure that you have representation when you do your research. Remember we talked about voice command? Do you remember that example, the Google example about voice command? And remember we talked about when they first started, they who remembers what the issue was with voice command last week with Google? Does anyone remember that? What was the issue they ran into when they were utilizing people to
Oh,
test for voice
um,
command?
for the women, it was like the pitch was wrong, or you couldn't hear. People
Hmm.
couldn't really understand it, so they
Right,
switched
the
it.
voice command wasn't recognizing a women's pitch, and why wasn't a voice command why did voice command initially have an issue recognizing a woman's voice? Why? Because who did they primarily test when they were rolling it out? Or who did they use?
Oh man.
They used men. So that wasn't a, when they were training voice command, they didn't utilize, it wasn't broad, it wasn't a broad representation. What was another issue they ran into, Janella? Do you remember the other issue?
No.
Accents. So people who were from different places, they were training the voice response or the voice command on Native American speaking men. And they weren't utilizing a broad enough spectrum of women, of people from different cultures. So it wasn't picking up like if you were from Europe or if you were from India, it was having issues, right? So that's why testing has to be broad. When you guys tell me I don't understand or it just seems common sense, I already know that you're only thinking about people who can see. That's you're not even you're in your framework, you're not considering the questions you should ask somebody who may be using assistive technology. That you're not considering that if you tell me that. You're not considering people who have never been online before, right? So your questions, your interviewing process, you can't just interview people who are tech savvy. You can't just interview people ages 10 to 40. You understand what I'm saying? So, like, when you're formulating these questions, you also have to think about who you're supposed to be interviewing. So, opening up your mind and letting go of all assumptions and taking into consideration everything is a building block. You never let go of what we learned last week. So last week, if we had like these long conversations about people using assistive technology, and we had these long conversations about people who've never been online before, right? You hold on to that because this week, when I'm asking you, what are some interview questions you need to ask to assess how easy it is, how usable it is for someone to go through this process, all of those people we talked about last week need to be in your mind when you're formulating these questions. So bring in everybody who may be using assistive technology to mind. Bring in everyone who may have never been online before to mind. Having empathy, you bring in a 90-year-old to mind as you formulate these questions. What's another, you see what I'm saying? What are the questions we need to be asking when we interview these people? So back to here, Did you experience any issues completing any of the fields on the form? If yes, which field specifically did you encounter issues with? Because back to my example, if I'm using assistive technology, I may tell you I had an issue with the select dropdown. That's important for you to note, right? Because when you take that information back to the developer needs to check that field to make sure they added the accessibility tag. Does that make sense? So like when I'm going here, this is what so it's this information is not just for the design team. This information is also because you're an advocate for the end user. The information you gather, it goes to the design team and it goes to the development team. So the development team is also dependent on you. The end user is not only dependent on you as a UX designer, the development team is also dependent on you as a UX designer to get the feedback in case they overlooked anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at this field, if I inspect it, this is what the developer is going to do. The developer is going to go in here where you see right here where it says ARIA. Do you guys see that? ARIA required equals true.
Yeah.
And then you see right here where it says ARIA label equals shipper state. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay. So ARIA tags have to be present on every input field because these are the tags that assistive screen readers read. So if I'm visually impaired and the developer made a mistake, maybe they forgot to put this tag on this input, I'm not going to be able to select my state. You understand what I'm saying? So when so if you interview 3 people with assistive technology, let's just say, for example, if you interview 3 people who use screen readers, and all 3 of those people come back and tell you, I wasn't able to select my state. As a UX designer, what's your next step? When you get that information back, who are you who do you bring that up to? I just told you the answer. Who's going to look into it?
The coder.
The developer. Yeah. And the developer is they may look at this and say, oh, shoot, we forgot the ARIA tag. And then they'll add the ARIA tag so that the screen reader can read the field. That's why it's important you ask that question. So you guys understand, like, are you on yeah. So we got that. What other questions are we asking looking at this from that vantage point? So we already covered how easy was it for you to enter your address information? What other question do we need to ask?
Did
What
you
other
need to perform a detailed address check?
I'm sorry, go ahead. I can't hear you.
Did you need to perform a detailed address check?
How do you form that as a question that's assessing whether or not it was accessible, whether or not it was easy, whether or not it presented a pain point?
Did you use our detailed address check? And if yes, did you accomplish the check? Did you
So you're saying, did you utilize our detailed address check, right? If yes, what's the follow-up question? Help her out, Angela. We're a team. We're all in the office working together at FedEx.
Yes, were you able to check your address?
Yeah, if yes, were you able, but we don't want to, okay, were you able to
confirm?
Okay, no, you're right. Were you able to complete? Were you able to successfully? Were you able to successfully utilize the tool. What's the follow-up question to that? It's the same as before.
If yes.
If experience any issues.
Right. But what else? What do we want to get? Okay, if yes, did you experience any issues utilizing the tool? And what's the follow-up to that? The final, everything. So listen, for every question, for every feature, let me give you guys this framework to help you out. The purpose of your questionnaire, right, is to assess their experience utilizing every feature throughout the process. So a feature is like if they let you, think of a feature as like when you buy a TV, you have features. You have the volume, the up, the down, the cast, like features. So a feature would be like a bonus or an add-on or something you can do. So when you're forming your question, you have to make sure your questions gauge whether or not pain points exist for every feature and whether or not every feature was usable, right? So the first thing for you to do, because I think this will help you guys if you have a framework, because I can see. So look, let me do this to kind of help you, give you a cheat sheet. I'm gonna put it here. If you do this, this will help you. This will help you streamline your thought process. And I'm aware of the time before you guys tell me it's not time yet. All right, for formulating interview questions. I feel like this framework will help you. If you first identify all features being adding up shipping, entering your email address, calculating costs, all of the capabilities that are within the process, right? So identify all features that are a part of the user experience. And I'll expand that and even say features and tasks. Tasks being CTAs, call to actions, okay?
Okay.
So if you go into it, the first thing you do is you want to identify all features and tasks that are a part of the user experience to achieve the goal of focus. Because I also notice that when I ask questions, the focus is lost a lot. Like if I come in and I say like you're hired by FedEx to design or to improve the design for their shipping process, the focus is shipping, right? So like in this example, that would be shipping or whatever you're designing for. So identify all the features and tasks. I'm going to say features, tasks, and steps. All right. So identify all features, tasks, and steps that are a part of the user experience to achieve the goal of focus. And in this example that we're working through, the goal of focus is shipping, right? So as you identify all the features and the tasks and the steps that are a part of the user experience to achieve the goal of shipping their package, once you do that, the second goal of your, the framework for you to follow is to ask questions to expose possible pain points and or room for experience. Room for improvement. Thank you. And a room for improvement. for each. Emphasis on each. Don't leave anything out.
Lord, this is tedious.
Yes. Identify all features, tasks, call to actions, and steps that are a part of the user experience to achieve the goal of focus, whatever you're designing for. Ask questions to expose possible pain points and or room for improvement for each. I'm going to be specific. Let me be user friendly to you guys. Feature. Feature. Task. CTAs. And steps. And then the third thing you want to do is, oops, oh shoot. Rate each experience for have the user rate each experience and completing task and utilizing key features. Okay, so if you think of it this way, no matter what the project is, if you hold on to those three things, have each user rate experience, and completing these tasks. Okay, so hold on to that framework. I think that'll help you guys. Okay, so so going back all the way back to the beginning, and when we come back from break, we're gonna pick this up. We got 1 minute. Well, no, we got 5 minutes. But you want to identify all features, tasks, and steps that are part of the user experience to achieve the goal of focus. In our case, is shipping, right? And then you want to ask questions that expose possible pain points and a room for improvement for each feature, task, call to action, and steps. And then you want to make sure you have the user rate the experience. So with those three things, identify what they're going to experience, identify the pain points, and have them rate their experience. Identify possible pain points. So back to this. Let's go back. Let's use the framework. Identify all features and tasks. Looking at this page, what are the features and tasks of this page? What are the tasks? What tasks do they need to complete in filling out this form? There are 4 tasks. What are the tasks?
Entering the from and to addresses.
Yes. What are the 4? There's 4 major tasks. What are the 4 tasks?
Address information, shipment details.
Yeah, and confirmation. So the 4 tasks are to complete the address information, complete. If it's a task, you got to give me the action statement, the action verb, right? So the 4 tasks that are presented to the user, the 4 major tasks are to enter their address information, enter their shipment information, enter their payment information, and enter their confirmation information. This is what we're dealing with right now. So, in saying that, how do we formulate these questions? So going back to our ask questions to expose possible pain points and a room for improvement for each feature, task, and I'm going to say, or steps. So in this case, we're dealing with steps. So ask questions to identify pain points that may be associated with each step. So plain and simple, what's the questions? Did you have any issues with what? We got 4 things we're questioning them about.
Do you have any issues with entering the address?
Yes. 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 Did you have, so when we come back here, did you experience any issues completing any fields on the form, right? We can be more specific because remember, this is going to go to the design team. This is good. This blankets all of it, but we could also dissect this down if we wanted to, because we just kind of said any of the fields on the whole form, which is acceptable. But if we wanted to go further, we could say, did you experience any issues completing any fields and the address, what was it called? In the address information field, right? If yes, what? Did you have any issues completing the shipment details section of the form? If yes, what fields gave you an issue? Did you have any issues? You see what I'm saying? One of the reasons this could help in terms of segmenting it down that way, so you don't have to say, did you have any issues entering your first name? You're like, you don't, you can, did you have any issues entering? Because the page is telling you what you should be looking for, honestly. You see the page is broken up into 4 sections. So it's obviously important to the business layer that the experience be broken up into 4 different categories. So, like I said, not only you're the middle person, you got to remember you advocate for the end users, but you also provide valuable information to the development team. So if you were to interview 4 different people, they can kind of scan over it and they can say the address information section is good, but we got 10 complaints on the shipment details. You see what I'm saying? So that kind of helps them go through your report and just specifically go to the details section of it. They know they don't have to look at this. They can just go straight to here and see where the issues were. And then they could, I don't know, let's try to, before we got 2 minutes, let me try to enter something real fast. Kim, shoot, optional country. I don't know. I can't type fast enough. I don't know. 90210 Beverly Hills, boom, boom, boom. Recipient. You got to put your name in there. Last time, I guess we did this before. You lived in 90210 before. And then continue. Oh shoot, we got to enter a phone number. 216-222-2222. 216-222-2222. Okay, I'm trying to continue. Shipment details, right? So when we get here, you know, same thing. Select your options. But you guys get the point of what I'm saying? So what would be the question on here? We got 1 minute before we go to break. 1 minute, 1 minute. What's the question?
How did you, I don't know, how difficult was it to select your rate? Or
were you able to?
Yes. Were you able to easily select your rate option? The question is, were they able to do the thing? So what's the thing they're supposed to do right here? What's the call to action?
It said X1 rate.
What's the call to action?
Select your options.
Right. So what are we asking them? Were you able to select your rate options? Yeah. Yeah. Ask them were they able to do the thing that we're asking them to do. All right. On that note, we'll digest all that, take a 15-minute break, and we'll come back and revisit this from that frame of reference. I'll see you at 10:30.
okay.
Okay.